Hi. So this is another one of my vlogs. It's Monday, March 12th, 2019. I haven't done one of these in my office using my webcam for quite a long time. I don't think I've ever done one wearing this hair. So here we go. Anyway, I started doing vlogs a while back, and it was really to record kind of like a journal, a video journal for me to record my thoughts and the happenings surrounding my mom's dementia. And I started a little bit, probably the last year she was alive, and then I really started to, it was just beneficial for me to get my feelings out. It just seemed so weird because I'm kind of talking to myself. But then I thought, well, who knows, maybe one day my daughter or somebody in the family will come across these and hear, I don't know if anybody's interested. But today I thought that I would this is just out of left field, but I thought that I would share um, a memory that I have. And I was thinking about it. For some reason, it popped into my head today, and I was thinking about it, and I thought, wouldn't that be funny to record this story for, I don't know, posterity, for my daughter or whoever. But I was thinking about how I became, back in, I think it was 1982, a Continental Airlines flight attendant, because it didn't happen the way a normal situation would happen. So to set it up, I need to describe what my life was like. I was 20, I think I was 25 years old. Yeah, I was 25 years old. And I was living in San Antonio, Texas with my husband. We didn't have our daughter yet, so it was just the two of us. And we were just involved in the daily grind of going to work. That was basically our lives at that point. And I was a typesetter for USAA, which is a very large insurance company. In fact, it insures the American military officers and their families. I think maybe since they've opened it up to other people too, but at the time it was just military people. It was huge. The building I worked in was second in size only to the Pentagon. So it was their home office, and I worked as a typesetter. So I worked in their print department, kind of in the bowels of the building, this gigantic building, and we did all of the insurance forms, and they had their own travel agency. We did all the travel brochures and just all this stuff. But to be perfectly honest, it was a burnout job. Like, I mean, I worked hard. I worked 10-hour days, 4 days a week. Supposedly I was supposed to get three-day weekends for doing that, but we were always behind on our projects. And so usually somebody had to work on Friday. So, we got paid overtime, but it was just a burnout. And I remember coming home, and literally by the time I got home after working a 10-hour day, and I had to commute there, and it was probably 30 to 40-minute commute. I can't remember exactly, but in city traffic, it's a big city. So I remember my husband saying to me one day, he goes, because I would just want to eat dinner, and then I would just sack out and go to bed. I was so tired and burned out all the time. And he and I both knew that I couldn't keep it up. It was taking a toll on me. And I remember my husband said to me, he goes, you need to get another job or something. He goes, because you can't keep doing this. And I said, well, what do you mean? I said, this is a trade. It's what I get paid for. This is what I do. What else am I going to do? And he said, I don't know, be a flight attendant or something. And which really, when I think about it, was totally out of left field. But I was like, what, a flight attendant? Of course, he had ulterior motives, because we were really homesick for our home state of Washington. And so he thought, wow, if Dana was a flight attendant, she could get free airline tickets for us to go home to visit all the time. So I don't know why he thought out of the blue that, because I was like chained to a computer all day long, and he tells me, be a flight attendant, okay, whatever. Well, it wasn't long after that. Oh, I did start looking for another job. That's another point I need to make. I started looking for another job. I just couldn't find anything that had the great benefits and the pay that I was already getting. But I decided to update my resume, and I paid somebody to update it. And when I mean update it, we didn't really have word processing and great graphics programs like we do now. So I actually paid somebody back then in the early 80s. I think I paid him 75 bucks, which was a lot of money back then, to typeset my resume. And it looked beautiful. And I had this beautifully done resume all ready to go to look for other jobs. Well, about 2 weeks after we had this conversation, all of a sudden I was looking at the paper one day and there was this big display ad and it said Continental Airlines will be in town at the Marriott, at the airport Marriott, and they were looking for people who are interested in being flight attendants. And I'm like, I got to go to that, like I got to find out what this is about. And I literally was never really that much of a risk taker, but I just knew I had to do something else, and I had my resume ready to go. So you're supposed to show up at this hotel with these other people in a big ballroom and bring your resume. And so it was like in the middle of the day, so I had to do it on my lunch break. And it was a little ways away from where I worked, so I had to, factor that in too. And I should also explain where I worked. I was in an office with like 3 or 4 other people, all in one office, and my boss was in there too. And he was a total type A anal type of a person. Like he's just always, we got to get stuff done, got to get stuff done. So if anybody was missing from that little one-room office, it was very noticeable. So I thought, I can't, I was really paranoid. I can't be gone very long. So I remember that day I was wearing this red dress. I go to this group interview, and you're supposed to hand in your resume, and you hand it to this guy sitting at a table. Okay, so we all sitting around in this big, large circle. There's 40 or 50 people in there. And then one by one, he just randomly started picking up resumes, calling out a name, and whoever it was supposed to stand up and say something about themselves and maybe why they want to be a flight attendant. And they get like 2 to 3 minutes tops to say it because there were so many people there. So we had to like make it really quick. And I was looking around at all these people, and literally, now I'm not exaggerating. The women, there were women there who looked like they were models, like tall and slim and beautiful, and I just, and as I look back now, I didn't look so shabby back then at that age, but I didn't think I could hold a candle to these people. And there were guys, and so they call my name, and I honestly don't remember everything I said, but whatever it was I said, it must have struck a chord. I remember one thing I said was that I thought that I was kind of a people person, that I enjoyed being around people, that I'd done stand-up comedy. And I think on my resume, I had taken CPR, a lot of things that I didn't know that they actually look for people who are going to be flight attendants. So when the whole thing was done, the guy says, okay, you can all go. I do have some questions for a few of you. And he says, Dana Chrysler, and he named off like 4 other people. Can you please come see me afterwards? I have a couple questions for you. I'm like, okay, I wonder what that's about. Well, all the people filed out of the room except for us 5 people. And he sat us down and he said, okay, so here's the deal. He says, I want you guys to come back for a second interview. And he goes, but you have to come back to this hotel at like 2:30 today. And, this is your opportunity. And I was like, oh no. I got to go back to work. How, what am I going to do? And so I said to him, well, I'm on my lunch break. I said, I really can't, does it have to be today? And he goes, yeah, it's got to be today. He goes, this is your opportunity if you're interested in this, So then I just knew. So I had a split-second decision to make. Okay, do I take this opportunity? Do I grab the bull by the horns, or do I just let it slip through my fingers? And I thought, I got to follow this as far as it goes. I got to follow this now that I've been given this opportunity. First of all, I couldn't even believe they asked me. I just couldn't even believe it. So I thought, okay, I got it. And I'm not proud of this. I'm not proud of it, but I had to lie. I couldn't tell my boss I'm at an interview. That would not have gone over very well. So I go over to the bank of phones that was in the hotel lobby. At that time we didn't really have cell phones. We had pay phones. So I go over to this bank of phones. There's a guy on the phone on one of them. I go to the next one. I put the money in. I call my boss. I say, hi, this is Dana. I'm sorry. I left to go on a lunch break, and I drove somewhere, and my car broke down. And I said, I'm really sorry, but I can't get back in time. And so my boss shows concern for me, and he says, well, oh, do you need somebody to come and get you or help you out? Oh, no, that's okay. I'm going to call my husband. I just don't know if I'm going to be able to come back this afternoon or not. And he's like, oh, okay. And so I hang up the phone, and I you have to know this about me. Lying does not come easy to me. And I felt terrible. I felt terrible for lying to him. I felt very guilty. And so the guy next to me overheard the conversation, and he says, I'm sorry, miss, but I couldn't help but overhear. He goes, do you need some help? Can I help you with your car? And I looked at him just flat. I said, I lied. He goes, pardon me? I said, I lied. I didn't really have car trouble. I said, but I have an interview and I didn't know what else to say. I had to lie. And, and he just kind of chuckled to himself and said, oh, okay, I understand. And, and he left. But then the next thing that happened was I had to, I killed time until 2:30. And then I had to go to this hotel room. They gave me the number and they said, show up at 2:30 at this hotel room. Well, when I look back on it now, it's like, it's crazy. Like what? It was ridiculous. This guy who was alone in a hotel room has me knock on the door, and I'm this young, perky 25-year-old, hi, I'm here for my interview, and he invites me into the room. And I remember at that time feeling like, what am I doing? I'm walking into a room with this guy, but it was the same guy who'd been at the group interview, so I felt a little bit okay with it. But I remember crossing the threshold into his room like, this is really not good, And so I look back now and I think, that was really not the way to handle things for them on their side. But I went in and he had this little table set up next to the window and he invited me to sit down and we chatted and I told him a little bit about myself and he asked me, how would my husband feel if I went away to flight attendant training school for a few weeks? And I said, my husband's supportive, and all this. And so he hands me some paperwork at the end and he says, okay, here's an invitation to come to flight attendant training school. And I was just shocked. My whole life was about to change. I mean, I had just been involved in this drudgery for several years of doing this thing and being a flight attendant was completely out of my comfort zone, out of anything I'd ever done. But I was so excited. And I remember I went home when my husband got home. I'm telling him excitedly about all of this. And then he gave me the application. And I said, and I can't figure out why me? Why did they choose me? They had all these other beautiful people there. Why did they choose me? And I remember my husband looking at me very matter-of-factly and saying, why not you? Why not you? And then I remember having this mental shift like, oh yeah, why not me? Because well, it's a long story. I won't go into it, but I grew up really like a lot of kids feeling very less than, very inferior because I was a fat kid. I had rheumatic fever when I was a kid. I wore orthopedic shoes. I felt different. I was fat. I didn't really lose the weight until I got a little bit older. And so I just didn't think of myself as anybody special at all, which I think was in the long run very good for me because I feel like that amount of adversity actually helped me to concentrate on other areas of my life that I did have control over. So at any rate, I did go away to flight attendant training school. It was in Denver at Denver University. And so the dirty little secret is that Continental was expecting a flight attendant and a pilot strike. And they were preparing for that strike by trying to hire in a very quick fashion pilots and flight attendants to keep their planes going. And so yeah, I was basically a strike breaker. And yeah, I know some people feel very strongly about this. I, at that time, had no real, I wasn't a union oriented person. I'd never been in a union. I didn't really feel that strongly one way or the other. But when I did get hired, I can remember getting off planes with pilots and the rest of the crew and having people, take our pictures and yell things at us because, they were very angry at us. Fortunately, we didn't have anything terrible happen. Nobody got hurt, but yeah, it was an interesting time. The end of the story is that I did get called to work after I think I went to training school for 6 weeks in Denver. Then I came home to San Antonio, and they said, "Okay, you're kind of on standby." So I think they were just waiting for the strike to happen or not, and to see how that played out. Well, I was put up in a hotel with a flight crew with pilots and flight attendants in a Howard Johnson hotel for 2 weeks. I remember we got $25 per day per diem, And so, like, literally, we had nothing to do all day. So we would just like lay around the pool, hang out at Howard Johnson's, go shopping. We'd save our money. And then at night, we would go out to a nice meal at a nice restaurant. And this is what we did for 2 weeks until we got the call, okay, you're going to work. Then I had to go to Houston, which is where their main hub was. And that's where I started working for Continental. The amusing slash sad part of the whole story is that after I went to work for Continental, I kept getting airsick. And I didn't really want to, at the time, they had those patches you could wear, but I did, the medication in them, I don't think it's like the stuff they use now because it really made me sleepy. And so I really was afraid to use a patch or any of the kind of medications you can use for air sickness. And so I remember I called my husband from a hotel room after a flight, and I don't remember where it was now. But anyway, I called him and I said, I don't know if I can keep doing this. I said, I keep getting sick. If I don't, like if I have 2 flights in a day or 3 flights in a day, I get sick in at least one of them. And I don't know if I can keep this up. And I said, what should I do? Should I quit? And wise man that he was, but also it irritated me. I said, what should I do? And he said, I can't tell you what to do. You have to make that decision for yourself. And so I was sitting in the hotel room feeling lonely and sick. And I thought, okay, this has been a great ride. I've met people from all around the country at the trading school, and it's been fun. And I got to kind of follow it full circle, but it's kind of not as glamorous as I thought it would be. And I miss my husband. I don't, oh, this is another thing. I thought that I would get to come home on my down, the days that I was off, that I would get free flights home from Houston to San Antonio. But it turns out they weren't going to let us have that for a full year. We were on probation for a year. So I wasn't going to get free tickets for a whole year. And so I would have to pay every time I wanted to go home to see my husband. So that kind of entered into my decision as well. I thought, this isn't as great a deal as it's cracked up to be. It was fun while it lasted, but I'm more of a homebody. I would rather be with my husband than traveling around, getting sick every day. So I made the decision to leave, and I don't regret it at all. But there were a lot of people, frankly, that I saw that were married, that were not living like married people in that profession. And I didn't really want to be a casualty. I didn't want my marriage to be a casualty of that. So I made the decision to come home. I'm still friends with some of the people that I went to training school with, believe it or not. And I just look back at it as just I'm actually super glad I did it. It was kind of like a fantasy, to go follow it and see how it went. It's kind of like Fantasy Island, where you have this fantasy and then nothing turns out the way you think it's going to. But I'm not sorry I did it. It was a lot of fun. So that's my story about being a flight attendant. There's a lot of things I could say about training school, which was pretty interesting. We did a lot of fun stuff. One of the things we did is we got to fly from Denver to Houston one night on a DC-10, and we had it was just us, just all the students, and we had full control of the plane. We got to play with the PA system. We got to go up and talk to the pilots and see all the controls and do all that fun stuff. And it was just, it was a lot of things I never would have done. But now when I fly and I see flight attendants working, I just think, better you than me.